What's up, guys? Big Papa Drock back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. And guys, I am so excited. We have a first-time guest on the channel. It's the one and only Crouching Grandpa. Should I call you Crouching or Grandpa? What do you prefer?
I go by many names. Usually Gramps is fine. It's good enough for me. Anything Crouching Grandpa, Gramps, Juho is
Gramps.
my first name. That also works.
Okay, we got multiple options here. I'm going to say either Gramps or Grandpa. But important question, are you actually a grandpa?
Not that I know of, no.
No, I didn't think so. You look way too young. So anyway, super stoked to have you on the channel, man. Guys, we're going to do a collab on Crouching Grandpa's channel as well, which I will link down in the description below. Do me a favor, go give him some love, drop him some likes, drop him some subs. He's I guess I wouldn't say new raid creator, longtime raid player, but why don't you give us a little bit about your background, how long you've been playing raid, and then you can talk about where we may know you from, which actually is from Fateless. So you can get into that as well. So go ahead, Gramps, take it away.
So I've been playing Raid for about 4 years, and the way I came into the Hell Hades community was one day I was looking for my ninja build, like what should I put on ninja, what kind of gear, what kind of sets. I just came in, asked the guys around, and I just fell in love with the community. I fell in love with the game, and I've been playing Raid pretty much every day for past 4 years. I've been doing YouTube live streams for about 2.5 months, give or take. And right now my daily job is community engagement and management for Fateless, where I've also been dipping into QA as well, so that's cool. And also I'm working for HH Gaming as well. So
very cool. Very cool to be coming from that kind of background. And I think I've seen you posting in the Fateless Discord. Was it for the poker nights? Were you the one who was kind of helping to arrange that? Am I remember correctly?
yeah, that's one of many. And recently we've been having more like the game focused events, so not as much poker, a bit more Godforge, a bit more Fateless. So it's been a lot of fun, and the community has grown to an insane amount. Like we are closing in on 30,000 Discord members, and that's just insane to me.
It's crazy, and that's before a game is even launched. So just so you guys know, Fateless is Hades, as Gramps just told you, but it's the company behind Godforge, which is, I think, a game that we're all extremely excited for. I think you guys are releasing the beta pretty soon, if I remember correctly. I know I'll be playing that. So super stoked to see what you guys are cooking up over there. But today's video is not about Godforge or Fateless. No, we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. And maybe, I don't know if it's near and dear to your heart, viewers, but you can let us know in the comments down below. We're going to talk about Live Arena and how the meta has shifted, right? Like, I think we're coming up on, what is it, a little over 2 years since Live Arena released. Is that right, Gramps?
I think so, about 2 years.
About 2 years. And obviously, we just had this huge update with Live Arena Seasons. We don't have to necessarily get into that, but yeah, the meta has changed a lot. I think we can all agree on that. And certainly a lot of that has to do with the champions that have come into the game. But, refresh our memory. When Live Arena started 2 years ago, what do you think the meta was at that point in time?
I think the meta was to go slow in Stone Skin, and nowadays I've been trying to dip back into the Live Arena meta, and using my Gendraphone, who's like 160 speed in Stone Skin, he just gets destroyed out of the game. Like, he doesn't get to move, he doesn't get to use his skills. None of that works anymore, and it's just all about polymorph, so you can't really use debuffs anymore either. If you want to use speed, you have to be like 420 speed, you have to have specific sets, so it certainly has changed a lot. And now with the relics coming in, it gets even more complicated, even more crazy. There's just so much going on, and you just have to you have to stay on point at all times, or else you're just gonna fall out.
I don't disagree with you, right? It is kind of crazy because, I think about the change from Classic Arena to Live Arena, right? And that was a big shift of people started building champions a little bit faster for Live Arena, but nothing crazy like you see today, where I completely agree with you. Like in the past, go second, super slow, super tanky teams with tons of stone skin, that was what you saw a lot of until people started getting their hands on Georgid, and then they started building their nukers really fast. And it's just really interesting to me how much things have shifted in the last 2 years. And that's not even accounting for the fact that now mythicals are in the game, and that by itself has been a massive shift. Just so everyone knows, what Live Arena level are you playing at, Gramps?
I think I'm at about gold 3, and whenever I get to gold 4, I just get bullied out instantly. I get met with these teams full of mythicals, full of stone skin, full of 6-star blessings, and there's so many mythicals in the game, and they keep adding more. It's so hard to keep track of like who does what, who has lockout, who has this sort of taunt buff, who has revives, who has block active skills, who is damage. It's just there's just so much going on all the time.
You're not wrong. It's insane. Like, how many? I'm counting mythicals right now. I think we're up to like 23 or 24 mythicals, something like that. Pretty close to that number, which is pretty nuts in a little bit over a year's time since they were introduced. And it really has changed the meta so much. And, it's crazy to hear that even at life, gold 3 level, right? Not even gold 4 yet. Not consistently, I should say, that you're running into these things all the time. Because I'm not super familiar. Like, my personal experience is I've got my main account, which has been in gold 4 for a long time now. And then I have my free to play account where I haven't really pushed live arena at all. And I'm still sitting in like silver, I think 2 or silver 3 or something like that. Maybe silver 2 in live arena down there. And you'll see a mythical every once in a while at that level, but you won't see them super frequently, right? So it's crazy to hear that as you hit like gold, maybe 1 or 2, certainly 3, you're starting to see them every single fight, which is definitely not easy. And talking about a meta shift, so you mentioned Lockout. Man, that's really changed a lot in the last several years as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was so happy when I finally got my Yumeko, my most wanted hero for a long time, and then shortly after they just keep pumping these mythicals that don't really care about Lockout anymore, and it doesn't matter. My Yumeko has my best gear. She has like 380 speed, 800 accuracy, and it doesn't matter. Might
Yeah.
as well not be there because like it's like an insult when you lock out someone. They just don't really care and they metamorphosis and just carry on and destroy your team. So
Yeah, that's definitely been one of the big shifts because at one point, I mean, Yumiko was the meta in live arena where you ran into her all the time. Now I barely see her at my level. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that Lockout isn't as good, right? It's not that it's not still usable. It absolutely is for certain champions, but there are enough counters to it now at this point with champions like Galathier or champions like, a Lazarius. Well, I'm clicking on all the wrong things here, but just champions that can shift forms as a mythical, and they no longer have to worry as much about getting locked out in the first place. So it's been crazy to see that kind of shift as well. But getting back to the idea of speed, so at your level, gold 3, what kind of speeds do you think you're running into?
I think I'm running into about 415 and 430, somewhere in that ballpark, and my speed gear isn't the greatest. My fastest champion is Arbiter at 409, I think.
Wow.
So I'm not really sure how I should be approaching it
Dude, that
really because
is
it gets rough. It gets rough really fast.
yeah, that really does change things. 409 2+ years ago, that was incredible speed back then. Now that's not fast enough to go first reliably. And at my level, you're looking at speeds like 470, 480. Some people I think are over 500 now, or very close to it. I'm pretty sure they're over 500, which is just ludicrous amounts of speed. And I think one of the biggest changes, and I'm curious if you see this at your level, one of the biggest changes for live arena at my level is not just the overall speed, but really it's the speed of nukers. That's what's changed so much, I think, from when live arena first came out. And like you think back to classic arena, classic arena, you had nukers built at 180 speed and you were totally fine. Like that was not a problem. 180, 190, maybe 200 speed, and you were really getting quick there back in the day, 3 or 4 years ago. Live arena came out and it slowly started improving where people started doing speeds around, like 250 or so, maybe 260 if it was a really fast champion. And then you got to where we're at today, where like champions like Marius, my Marius is 351 speed. Like my Marius is faster than many people in the game's speed leads. And even still, I don't think this is fast enough. Like I kind of really want my Marius to be at like 380 or 390. And it's such a hard thing to achieve, even at the high level, because you have to maintain damage stats and maintain like your overall survivability for some champions, or in this case accuracy. You can't hear it or can't see it because your camera's blocking it. But I mean, do you run into a lot of really fast nukers at your level, or are teams not as speed tuned as they are at the high level?
I don't think the nukers are that fast. I would say they are starting to push 300, but they are certainly not like 350 plus or 400 or anything like that. And I was just about to say the same. Like your Marius is a lot faster than a lot of people's arbiter, and that just really puts things into perspective, right? Like how much the meta has shifted with the relics and the blessings and the empowerment, and like it just adds up so much. If you took that all away, you would lose maybe like 40 speed, which would make it look a bit more reasonable, but yeah,
Yeah.
350 speed Marius is kind of insane to me.
Well, these relics, it's insane to me too, and the fact that people have them faster and stronger is also insane, considering mine's +4. But these relics, you touched on this a little bit too. I think we haven't even begun to see how relics are going to really change the game, because many people don't have any of the mythical ones yet. Some people do, and they're very, very lucky. But like some of these relics, you read what they do, and it's just insane how powerful they are. Like, for example, Chrysalis of Rebirth, plus 24 speed when fully leveled up. I mean, you're definitely seeing over 500 at the top level at that point in time if somebody has this relic on. And then that it doesn't even take into account a fully leveled relic's ability to do absolutely bonkers stuff. Like, for example, this one, if somebody revives, they get a guaranteed extra turn at the top level. I mean, I'm honestly at the point where I'm kind of getting scared as to what's going to happen when this stuff comes into the game. Like, how much is the meta going to shift even further? And that's not even counting things like, they haven't confirmed this. This is just speculation on my part, but I'm sure at some point they're going to drop mythical voids, right? Would you imagine that's the case?
I would imagine that as well. It just feels too logical. It feels too easy to do. It just feels like something that I'm thinking it has to be the next step at some point. Like there's just no other way. Because in a game like this, you have to keep adding that little unicorn that everybody's chasing. You have to have that next big thing. First there was like mythicals, then they add relics, then they add empowerment, they add blessings. There's always that next big thing, because right now you are seeing that the biggest krakens in the game, they have everything at +4. They have every single soul in the game. They have everything they can ever spend money on. There's just no reason to spend money on in the game anymore.
Yeah,
So
you
they have to
make
add they
a,
have to add something new to the game.
it's a very, very valid point where there's, I hate to use this analogy, but it is kind of accurate. Like you're chasing the dragon, right? You know what I mean? You're chasing that next big thing that's going to take you over the hump. And certainly, I do think. I mean, me personally, I feel like by the end of the year we see more like void mythicals. I'm really curious if that ends up being true. But I feel like that's the next evolution of what they're going to do to increase power. And I didn't see relics coming, but I mean, this system is pretty nuts, frankly, especially when you consider just the amount of RNG that it's introduced to the game. Not only RNG in terms of obtaining these things, because at the moment there's not really super, easy ways to get this stuff or to get the good ones. It's pretty hard when you look at how restrictive this crafting is. But then also just the RNG of what these things do. I mean, you honestly have no idea what's even happening anymore in live arena. I think that's one of the biggest meta shifts as well, where 2 years ago you had a pretty good idea as to why you'd win or lose a fight, right? Like, someone had a Harima and that countered your Sung Wukong or whatever, or that countered maybe like it gave you a chance to survive a Taurus or whatever else it is. Now it's like, wait, I got sheep by a wand, but then somebody has gold elixir and they won't die, and oh wait, if someone has aspect of Siroth, you just don't even know what's happening anymore. So I think that's also one of the big shifts in this game mode, is that most of the time I'm just trying to figure out what's actually occurring, let alone how to win the battle. So that's certainly been a shift as well for me. Has it been the same for you?
Yeah, for sure. And back in the day when I was a lot more active in arena, the biggest surprise you could ever see was reaction gear, and that was it. And
Yes.
it was quite tame when you compare it to these days, where there's relics, there's blessings, there's all sorts of like mythical passives that nobody ever remembers, because every mythical has 17 different things that they do. And it's really been a wild ride, and it's hard to keep track of everything. I think they need to add some way to observe what the enemy has. Like there has to be some sort of indicator that this champion has this relic or this champion has these accessories, because there's just too much RNG at this point.
I actually agree with you. What I would say is this: like, I think it's tough because you want to have an element of surprise, right? Where someone can't plan for what is happening in a battle. And so this is the kind of tricky thing now because they've added so many layers to this, where you want to be able to surprise someone. What I would love to see, maybe a compromise here, and I think I talked about this on a stream recently, is give me some kind of box up here that just tells me what's happening. Tell me, like, if I go here and I do this, and somebody over here gets sheeped, just tell me, like, wand of submission activated. You know what I mean? Like, let me be able to scroll this to tell what's going on. Because in the moment, you can't read like 30 lines of text right here in 1 second to try to figure out what's happening, right? Like, you know, like all these things that pop up, like, oh, who got cooled down, who didn't get cooled down. So I personally would love to see them do something over here in the corner that just gives me a log of what's occurring so I can quickly refer to this and be like, I didn't lock out the Harima, or Aspect of Sarath just proc, so I actually know what's happening. That would be like one of my biggest requests for you know, improvements for them to make. Is that going to happen? No, it's not. but maybe it can happen with Godforge. Maybe it can happen with Godforge. You know what I mean? I have high hopes for you guys for cooking something up over there that's a little bit less, for lack of a better word, convoluted than the current live arena scene is. Are you guys working on some good arena stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I think we've already teased that we are going to have a roguelike PvP mode as well. So where spending doesn't play such a role that it does in Raid. And
I didn't know that.
It's definitely going to be a good one.
Okay, well, that's going to be a huge change, and that will be super sick to check out. We'll have a mode that there is no spending required. Okay, I'm really curious to see that. That'd be a lot of fun. I'm trying to think of, like, the other big thing here, of course, you know, the seasons came in. We're not going to talk about this too much. I'm really more focused about the meta here, but do you feel like on your side, I think one of the big complaints that I've heard from people is just how bad the matchmaking has been since seasons has come into play. Is that something that you're seeing or not so much?
I'm not really sure how the matchmaking actually works, and that's one of my pet peeves in this game, that they don't really explain the player what's going on. They just expect you to press the button and figure it out yourself. Because at one point I was facing, like, I had 3 teams in a row that were like mythical. Then the next guy was like level 75 with Air Street and like Husk.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Did you win those battles, or did you lose all 3 of those battles? That would be my question.
I think I lost, yeah.
That was, so I think you got one of the bots, because now there are apparently bots in Live Arena where if you lose 3 battles, they give you a bot to face, which I think is both a good and bad thing. Good in that, like, nobody wants to get clapped playing a game mode over and over and over again. And I feel like that can happen really quickly in Live Arena. But that, you know, that kind of proves my point, right? Like, if you're getting matched up with someone who has multiple mythicals time and time again, there might be something that they need to take a look at there, right? Maybe matchmaking isn't working the way it's supposed to. You know, at least that's what I've heard. So that's something for us all to consider here. Any other big meta shifts that you think have come into play? You know, you mentioned Polymorph. Let's briefly talk about this, because I can't help myself. Anytime I get a chance to talk about Polymorph, Gramps, I'm going to talk about Polymorph. It's interesting to me how this has shifted in the game as well, where, you know, when they first introduced Polymorph, it was insanely broken, right? Just absurdly overpowered. And I would argue that it's still too strong, right? Like, now you have more ways to counter it. So they've given us ways to try to deal with it with Pinpoint, which has also been a massive meta shift. If you want to talk about Live Arena changing, Pinpoint's been a big thing too. Like, now you have more ways to counter it, but it's still really, really strong. They've never changed the actual strength of the blessing itself in terms of how long it lasts, or the fact that it takes away all your buffs or cuts your health in half or things like that. That's always been my biggest complaint about it. Is that something you see at your level where, you know, when you're a gold 3 player, I assume you're a low spender, maybe not not free to play, right? Like low spend?
Yeah, I would classify as low spend in this genre. If you compare it to any other game in the world, I would be a dumbass for spending like $4,000 into a game, but it is the nature of gacha games, so
if you're a dumbass, then I'm the dumbest motherfucker alive, so don't feel too bad. Don't feel too bad. But yeah, so okay, so you're in the low spend kind of arena. At your level, I think one of the things that's also changed is at the high level, people have more ways to counter polymorph now than you do at the low level. And what I mean by that is at the high level, if you're dumping a ton of cash in a raid, you've probably farmed a ton of pinpoint gear. Maybe you've gotten lucky to get some good pinpoint gear, and so you don't feel it as oppressively as you did because you were able to take advantage of that counterplay. Is that something that occurs at your level, or is polymorph still really oppressive where you don't feel like you have a lot of ways to deal with it?
I think my counterplay is to get lucky and not get sheeped. There's not really like a whole lot I can do about it. I don't really have pinpoint. I have maybe half a set on my account. At the time of the event dungeons, I didn't really value pinpoint that much. I didn't see the immediate benefit, and it's also one of those cases where you have to farm so much of it to get at least one good set, and unless you are dumping tens or hundreds of thousands of energy into the dungeon, it just didn't make sense to me at the time.
I completely agree with you in that it is so hard to get, like, it's just so hard to get your hands on good pinpoint gear, especially artifacts. You can get tons of accessories, but getting your hands on good pinpoint artifacts, it just feels freaking impossible. And though there are people I know in this game who've put over 5 million energy into that dungeon. No joke. It's not an exaggeration. Like that much energy in order to get really great pieces. I'm nowhere near that. I'm probably at a couple 100,000. And it's just nuts to me, like that disparity of where the ultra end game ultra spend is versus me, who's definitely a high spender, and I'm only putting a couple 100,000 in. And then you've got like people who are low spend. How are you supposed to farm the gear that actually makes this blessing less of a pain in the ass to deal with? Because they haven't changed. Again, they haven't changed anything strength wise about this, which was always my biggest complaint, is that if you get sheeped, it's probably GG's, right? It's probably GG's. And even the relics don't fix this in that now you're just flinging sheep all over the place. You don't even know what's going on. You're just wanding it back at someone. It's still just as strong. So it is interesting to hear kind of, at your level, you don't have a ton of pinpoint to deal with this, so you probably run into this quite a bit then.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I kind of disagree with you is that I don't think sheep can be fixed. I don't think it can be saved. The only solution to sheep is for Plarium to say, hey, we messed up, and delete the thing. That's
oh,
it.
wow. So you're the true sheep truther. I love this.
Yeah.
As someone who was in your position for the longest time, and God knows there's enough videos on my channel of me ranting about sheep, so I won't do it right now, but without a doubt, that was my opinion for the longest time, where it's like, why did they ever even put this in the game? It never needed to be here. It didn't make sense. I somewhat changed my tune when they introduced mythicals, just because they made every single mythical that does debuffs ignore accuracy, basically, or ignore resistance. So then I was like, well, now resistance was already bad and really hard to do. Now it's basically pointless at the high level because someone can come in with a Crixia and there's no amount of resistance you can have to counter that. It's just not doable. And so then I was like, okay, maybe you do need a little bit of polymorph. So this is very refreshing. So I am not the only one, guys, who hates polymorph. This is how you ensure a great collab on my channel. You talk about how broken polymorph is. I appreciate this, Grandpa. But so it's funny because now I'm in the place where I'm like, oh, man, if you don't have it on some level, what do you do? If somebody has all mythicals, they just run rampant through you, right? You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like they've created this scenario in live arena and arena in general, polymorph, where it really has just become a massive RNG fest in a way it never was before. And I think RNG is good, right? Like, would you agree? A little bit of RNG is good.
I think you have to have RNG, otherwise you are gonna have that one guy who has 100% win rate and just destroys everybody, and it's just not a good time. And the way I've been approaching games recently for like the past 2 years is that you have to have fun. That's the only thing you play games, right? So if something really feels bad and something really makes you think like this isn't fun, then just people are not gonna do it. And I think the way Arena is right now, especially Live Arena, it has a lot of those unfun elements. Like there's stone skin, there's tens of mythicals with such a vast amount of overpowered skills that you really can't counter with any regular legendaries anymore. And that just brings a lot of that feeling that this isn't really fun for me yet at this point. And that's something I really would like to change in my own mentality, maybe. because it is like really taxing, really exhausting when a lot of the time you are getting that feeling that I'm not having fun playing this game, you know?
That's true. It's a bad place to be with any kind of game, right? And especially a game where you may have spent money that that you could have put somewhere else into, where you feel like, why am I even doing this to myself? I think it kind of harkens back to that idea of raids sometimes feeling like a job, right? And most people say
Yeah.
that because the amount of time that you have to put into this game, especially if you're low spender free to play, your time commitment has to increase drastically to try to, to keep up. Not even keep up, because you can never keep up, but to at least maximize value, you have to put in more time. Whereas if you spend, you can maybe get a little bit of that time back. But even still, at the high level, you're still living in the game all the time. You want to be enjoying yourself. So that opens up a whole nother can of worms. We can't get too deep into that on this video, but suffice it to say, I have certainly felt the same way myself when it comes to enjoying raid. So I've got one final question for you before we go do a collab on your channel, and that is, okay, we've talked about the meta shifting. We've talked about how things have changed since Live Arena came out. What would be one thing that you want to see change going forward? Like if you were going to say, hey, I can wave a magic wand and I can change one thing going forward, what would that thing be?
I would have to say that it's not Polymorph, but it's Stone Skin. Stone Skin is too strong. And the way Stone Skin should work, in my opinion, it needs to have two separate effects. One for PvE, which is how it works now, and one for PvP. And instead of adding this crazy shield that you can't really realistically destroy, it would have to be something like plus 50% HP shield. And
That's actually really interesting.
And that would really open up a lot of ways to combat the current meta without having 50 different champions in Stone Skin, because a lot of the times it means that if you put your Marius in Stone Skin, he becomes a little worse for PvE, and you have to decide which do you value more, PvE or PvP. But if Stone Skin retained the effects it has now in PvE, and it was a bit different in PvP, then it would make it a lot more flexible to gear your champions.
That's actually a really interesting idea, to just have it be like a larger version of a shield, similar to like a bolster, but maybe with more effects. I think one of the most challenging things about Stone Skin, from my perspective, is just the inability to do any sort of real crowd control, right? Like you can't use so many champions. You have that RNG element of, you just don't know. You can bring in a bunch of champions that supposedly counter what somebody's doing, but if everybody's in Stone Skin, sometimes it just doesn't work. You may have the right strategy, you may have whatever, but you just can't get through that in order to actually apply debuffs or apply some type of crowd control or whatever else. And I know some people will say, like, well, Stone Skin is your counter to speed, and I think there's an element of truth to that too, where it helps to try to rein in the speed meta a little bit. Though I would say at the high end, it's there are champions now that can deal with Stone Skin more effectively than previously, but you have to have those champions, right? That's always been the RaidShadowLegends way, is most of the counterplay, some of it is done through gears in terms of like what gear set you have, but a lot of the counterplay comes to what champions can you pull from, and then can you build them super strong in whatever gear set you put on them. That's of course the other aspect of it. So that's interesting to think about. I can certainly, I'm curious to see how the new set, the Stone Cleaver set, maybe helps to alleviate Stone Skin in general, and shift the meta. So we'll see if that makes an impact with these new sets that just came out, that are of course part of these rewards that we get for playing Live Arena. I don't know where they are. They're somewhere around here. The whatever, the sets I'm talking about. But okay, this is great, man. I really appreciate having you come on. We're gonna do a collab on your channel now, where we actually do some team, review, where I'm going to take a look at some of your teams and we're going to see what you're cooking with. So I'm excited to do that. Guys, make sure to come check that out on Crouching Grandpa's channel. Again, going to be linked down below. Any final words for the audience?
If there's something I want to say, just keep having fun and play games to have fun.
There you go. That's literally probably one of the wisest things anyone's said on the channel. Certainly wiser than anything I've said. So thanks so much for coming on, man. An absolute pleasure to have you on. Again, always great to get to collab with somebody new. So guys, give them some love, throw them some subs and some likes, and then make sure to catch us on Crouching Grandpa's channel with this companion video coming up next. Anyway, I've been Big Papa Drock. This was Crouching Grandpa. I can't even say your name. Crouching Grandpa. And we are out.